Her many voices, her many voices, her many voices, her many voices.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Her Many Voices Foundation Lunch and Learn. Really excited to be here today with Francoise and talk about My Skin Global. And I think without further ado, I will invite you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the organization that you are here to talk about.
Thank you. My name is Francoise Mbabazi. I love my last name because it actually has a meaning. It means peace and kind.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. I am the co-founder of My Skin Global, which is an LLC organization founded here in Denver, Colorado. And really our intent, our mission is to educate, promote, and engage in active global partnerships that creates a society that is emotionally and psychologically stable and one that is grounded in the truth about the ills of skin bleaching around the world.
And I popped up the website here. It's www.myskingglobal.com if you want to know more about the organization. And you mentioned something, skin bleaching, which I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more about that practice and why you oppose it. I mean, I feel like it's pretty obvious, but I'd love to have you summarize it.
Yes, thank you. So skin bleaching is a practice of lightening your skin. And this practice is very dangerous. It's very harmful, particularly to the young population that is being targeted. It is a practice of wearing your melanin levels down to look lighter and whiter because systems or the global perspective of unattained beauty goes to convince us that the more lighter, the more white you are, the more beautiful and successful you will be. And so every year, many young people are enticed into thinking that having that lighter skin benefits them, but instead it's really harmful. It's a harmful practice. And so My Skin Global is determined to change that dialogue by educating people and affirming that who you are is so much more than just the skin that you are in. And so through educational strategies, we hope to shift the dialogue and instill self-esteem and self-love in young people and all of us and through humanity at large. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's painful and as you said, toxic. So that seems like I mean, it's weird, right? Because you look at that and you think, well, that seems like something someone would, of course, I mean, immediately not be interested in. What is it that, I mean, you mentioned the sort of larger social issues, but do you have a sense of what motivates a person? Like, is it a peer pressure thing or more of a marketing thing that kind of convinces someone, oh, I'm gonna try this harmful behavior? Because I imagine somebody just to wake up one morning and say, gosh, I think I'll put chemicals in my skin for fun. I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, that's again another perspective, another way of looking at it. I was personally introduced to skin lightening at a very young age. In Uganda, where the practice is more, rampant than it is, that I knew about at a very young age, things like, oftentimes you are out in the sun and, you get my forehead has always been darker than the rest of my body. And so comments like, you can look more beautiful if you can wipe off that dirt on your forehead. was always kind of like an okay kind of comment to make, you know.
Mhm.
Or if you can get rid of those dark, you know, pimples on your face.
Mhm.
Um, or, you know, regular comments that would come up by little boys, you know, kind of comment about being more attracted or interested in much more lighter skinned people, girls of our
Mhm.
age, was another thing that really kind of shifted my thinking around skin bleaching. I was
Mhm.
also born in a kind of hybrid family where my father was of a much darker skin tone, and my mother um, was a bit lighter, kind of like my skin tone. Um, my dad is still alive. I said was, but is still alive. And so just some of us are born a bit lighter and others are a bit darker. And so because of that combination within my family itself, I got to learn from my own sisters who are more lighter and some that are only one who is darker, who really hated herself because, and she still does, um, because of the fact that she was darker, you know, much darker in her own skin tone. And that practice, like just the observation, observing how and how she would look at me and the comments she would make about, you know, how beautiful you are. You know, what's the point of me going to school? I'll never be beautiful like you. I'll never be economically sound like you. I'll never get a job of my dreams because I'm ugly. And so in my opening remarks, I kind of hit on something that I call unattainable beauty standards. And those are things that you have seen um, on televisions, in social media of all kinds. Like majority of Black girls, in, you know, actors and actresses that all these girls are looking upon have somehow or have not denounced the practice of skin bleaching. So enhancing the skin tone seems more like the norm. You know, it's more because of colonial mentality, because of all the slavery mentality, because of all the white supremacists, because of all the ideals that have been set up to believe or to, you know, I call it brainwash. It's honestly, we've been told to believe that we are less of. And that goes a long way. It goes a really long way. And so because of that, every darker skinned girl wants to be whiter to fit the standards, to be beautiful, to be acknowledged, to feel that profile of like economically, you know, sound positions. You get a great job, you have a competitive opportunity if you look a certain way. Um, and so because of that, every girl, you know, in the BIPOC community wants to enhance their skin tone. And so one more thing I'll share is that I have a 9-year-old girl, Black girl. Um, at age 2.5, she was asked by her peers why she was Black. And she was also asked why her skin tone looked like pee and poop. She came home crying.
Yeah. That had to be so devastating as her mother to
Yes,
experience that.
absolutely. It still is devastating to
Yeah.
think about that today in the eyes of every Black girl that I see. You
Yeah.
know, my daughter will resent school for a minute. She didn't want to go back. She
Yeah.
didn't want to interact with kids of her age who were calling her skin color pee and poop. These are innocent children. The idea that we'll think and name it that way is a good reason to behind this whole practice, you know. And
Yeah.
so that was really honestly the birth of My Skin Global. Like all the experiences that I've had from childhood, what I've seen with my sisters, my cousins. I call myself a global citizen of the world, and every country I have been in and seen, the practice continues to be the same. It doesn't change. And so when we see and welcome our children coming home and seeing themselves in the image of pee and poop, I think the world needs to stand now. you know.
Yeah.
So yes, that's a long answer to your question. But
Thank
yes,
you.
that is what is behind this practice. It
Mhm.
is those unattainable beauty standards. It's the appearance, it's the attraction, it's the style. It is the dissatisfaction of who we are in our own skin tone.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's very, very powerful, and it's horrific, actually, that any child would be made to feel so like uncomfortable. And I know, and shamed almost for something that is just simply a part of who is beautiful. Like they're in that, and I know it's a more common practice than anyone wants to believe. But I'm so glad that that you're there for your daughter, and that you started this for so many daughters out there. I wanted to share Tawani. I don't know if you know Tawani Clark. She's a
Yes.
local amazing person that we get to work with sometimes. That she's here today, and she said, "Not every girl, but many agree. Many, a sad fact." And this is painful to witness our child going through such discrimination and pain. And then she said, and I would add hair to skin tone. And I mean, there's like, I appreciate that what you're doing, and the fact that there are at this point some tiny awarenesses, I think, making their way into the larger cultural understanding um that this isn't simply a cosmetic concern, right? Like, this isn't about, oh, I want my, my child to like have a cosmetic fix. This is about an actually painful act of discrimination that leads to these sh- behaviors that seem inevitable when they're put in this situation to try and, as you said, achieve an unattainable standard that is not healthy, and it's not realistic, and it's actually not a beauty. It's diminishment in the form of like a motivation that is not for real. It's not the people that are actually dealing with it. So thank you for taking the stand and doing this. I imagine that, it's a lot of work that what you're up to.
Thank
Um,
you. Yes.
and then I got a question from Alicia. How do you feel Western media impacts this issue? Or do you have a position on that?
Yes. The Western media has a lot to do with what's happening around this issue. Um, One of the things that I believe to be true is that the world follows the trend, the Western trends. Um, and when you don't stand on a particular issue and, like this one, and denounce it, and when you promote certain images on national television, that seem a certain way, that fits a certain criteria, that leaves the other behind, that is not centered around humanity and human kindness, that is not, instilling self-love and empowering our young people to follow the path of skin positivity and self-love, then you're part of the bigger problem. And, I look at America and, not only just America, European beauty standards, I guess is what I should say. Western media, Western cultures, Western traditions. Um, the tone was set way back,
Mm-hmm.
That the standards are so that if you're not white, you're not beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why what we see in the media is that people enhancing their skin tone to fit the profile.
Yeah.
Even those who have the means to thrive just the way they are
Mm-hmm.
enhancing their skin tone because of the media and what the media has set us to be, to believe, to, to kind of adapt. And if you don't adapt to that, then you're left behind. And so, yes, absolutely. When our kids watch TVs, when you think about those dolls, the dolls that are projected as sort of the means to identify beauty, when you set the kids in a room, you've seen it. It's been tested where, 3 different shades of dolls were presented to a very young group of babies, of kids, really, and the whitest of all, the blonde with the blue eyes, was selected as the most beautiful one. And the darker skin, doll was the ugliest. Even that has been, so that is the brainwash that ought to change. That's what society makes us believe that it is, the beauty. And so, yes, absolutely. The Western cultures and traditions and media has a lot to do with this. That's why FDA has to stand strong and denounce this practice. That's why, UNESCO, the world platform, needs to stand strong and denounce this practice. This is why global leaders of the world has to come together and be the voice for change, particularly global women leaders of the world. This is their calling. They need to stand up and denounce this mess. It's dangerous, it's toxic, it is harmful to the overall health, well-being of our children and the world at large. It needs to stop. Yes.
Thank you. Well, and as I think you're familiar that one of the core tenets of the Harmony Voices Foundation is whatever I do for another, I do to myself. Whatever I do to another, I do to myself. And so while this is an issue that is primarily and more immediately felt by darker skinned people, it affects us all. Like, we are all impacted when someone in our community thinks that they need to harm themselves in order to be enough. And so it's really important to recognize that this is a community issue that unfortunately is primarily put onto the members of our global community who are darker skinned, but it's actually something we need to take responsibility for from this position of being a white person or being in dominant culture. And that's what I appreciate about Alicia always pointing out that, like, we are all interconnected. This isn't just about someone else over there. This is about all of us. So thank you for being here to share and help us educate other people about what's happening. So I'm not Myrna. We advertised that Myrna was going to be here. She often is. And she's a really good friend of Francoise. So she's very disappointed. She had a work obligation come up. But she's watching from her airport before she gets on her plane. And so I want you to know she's here in spirit, at least. And she said she had a couple of questions because she knows you really well. And that one, how do you feel African culture plays into this as well? Or is that something you feel comfortable speaking to?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. Well, it's Mana. Thank you for Mana is actually the reason I got introduced to you guys to How Many Voices. So thank you, Mana, and thank you for making the effort to joining us while you're traveling. So African cultures. So just like majority BIPOC communities and traditions and cultures, the fact that majority of these developing countries are patriarchal societies, and the expectation on the girl isn't so much to work, to thrive, to be an independent entity, but to belong to and be taken care of by a male figure. It sort of perpetuates the problem. So if you're to be married to a certain class, because it fits in every economic profile, classism is another thing that is also attached to whiteness and economic well-being. And so if you're to marry someone of, an educated guy from a certain family, or you ought to look and fit the profile. This is why this practice is so rampant in really, I want to say developing countries, but again, you got to recognize it's a global pandemic. When you look in India, when you look in Asia, when you look at, Africa, the numbers just go up. And that's because we all are wanting to feed the profile for that one guy. that is economically sound, that is going to, oh, what if I don't feel the profile? What if I'm not beautiful enough? I can't compete on A, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels. And so the culture absolutely perpetuates that, in that you're not beautiful. Like, I know that in Uganda, where I was born and raised, women particularly are breaching themselves so they can, attract that one guy. I would say another thing though, like in Rwanda, where I'm from, the queens and kings were all darker skinned, Again, that's where like colonial mentality plays a part, because then the colonial mentality shifted what beauty looked like, because then, the Tutsis, we started being divided based on the features, what features you were in. If you were tall and skinny, a long nose and all this, then you must be really, closer to white, and that makes you more superior and smarter, and all these other things. And so, absolutely, to answer your question, every culture has something to do with the way we see ourselves. Every household has a responsibility. Every mother, every father has a responsibility to shifting this crazy practice. And we have no reason to believe in other practice other than ourselves. Kind of what you said about how many voices. Honestly, that self-love, that self-acceptance, that love for humanity, that confidence that upholds respect for all mankind, ought to be grounded in our traditional cultures around the world. And that's not the case today. It's not.
No. Thank you. Do you have any, the other question that Myrna suggested is the story of how you were raised, is that something you feel comfortable, because it feels like it fits here in terms of what you're just sharing? Or
the story of how I was raised?
Yeah. Is there a way in which you were educated? I know you had that experience with your sister, but what helped you to see that past that expectation for yourself? Was it?
It is. It was really mostly at a young age about my sister, my young sister, who was of a darker skin color, who one afternoon looked at me and said, I was giving her tough love about, why do you resent school so much, And she goes, Francoise, what's the point? What's the point of going to school? I'm ugly,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no point. I will never be beautiful like you.
And as you said before, that beauty for a lot of women was leading then to their ability to make a match. So it wasn't just a moment, it was a lifetime of fear in that one statement.
Yes. And so my first attempt to at age 14, I broke out and I had pimples on my skin. And my older sister, Rose, who was very light skinned, took me to a clinic and got me a little tube called Pimplex. And this Pimplex would sort of erase the scarring of the face from those pimples, but the pimples kept recurring. And so I kept using it. And I didn't know that it was actually lightening my face. And so my face looked more different than the rest of my body. And that's what my sister was reacting to. So when she say that, I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, oh my gosh, my face looks different. And she's like, yeah, you're beautiful, And so for her, I felt responsible, I felt responsible that maybe I was the reason why she hated herself, And so I had to stop for her. I had to stop for her. But here's the thing, like, because of all those pimples, keeping they kept coming back. And so I kept kind of doing this little thing where I would put a dot on the people and like, you know, but most of all these things is because we're not aware.
Yeah.
We're not educated about what the kind of like what the effects are. You're just given a thing as a kid and you're using it. And then every girl is passing on a tube. You can always look more beautiful.
Yeah.
Regardless of how light you are, you can always look more beautiful. And so there's a tube every girl has for morning and evening. And you just use, I never use those morning and after one, you know, evening ones, but I use the Pimplex. The thing is, it's like this, everyone, for me, honestly, what I think of when I think about skin bleaching is that every one of us has a story to tell when it comes to beauty and beauty standards. Some more than others, for sure. Those who are practicing should not feel ashamed. You know, this is not about shaming. This is about a coming together for us as a people, for us as a society, for us as BIPOC community. Like, honestly, no one should be ashamed. No one should feel less of because of the color of your skin. And like I said, all these practices that are happening is because we're so unaware. It's those cultural traditions that have bound us that we don't question. You don't question, you know? Yeah. So like you just do it because you've been asked to do. In India, where people are going blind because of this practice, it's because of lack of awareness and cultural indoctrinations. It has to come to an end. You know, this is not an African, Eastern, Western, whatever. This is a global cultural practice of colorism that must come to an end.
Yes.
You know, it is all rooted in racism. You know, there's no any other way to describe this. It has to end. And so I don't know if I answered your question, Mana, but
yes, you did more than is very powerful. And I want to add also, Tawani said the mainstream global narrative of beauty is too narrow and primarily Caucasian centric, which, you know, it's obviously very true. And then the Myrna was saying also, as a white woman, the cultural influences are about a kind of beauty, but the cultural influences for Black women are significantly more extreme. And so I also think it's a message that can resonate with, we all know that there's a way in which we feel not enough because of those narratives, most of us. And this is like obviously amplified for BIPOC women in a way that just needs, like you said, needs to be stopped. We need to shift how we talk about beauty and how we present beauty and how we understand that, you know, sometimes I want to get dressed up, but that doesn't mean it has to be about other people, right? Like I can get dressed up because I want to feel my own experience of my clothes or my body or whatever. It doesn't have to be to meet some other person's unattainable standard. Alicia had a question. Are boys and young men experiencing this type of pressure as well, or something different from what your experience and perspective is? Obviously, we don't expect you to know everything, but what you have seen.
yes, I definitely don't know everything. But
Why so I put that much pressure on you?
What I have seen is that, you know, yes, boys feel the same way in some countries. They're practicing just as much. But globally, majority of the practice is within Black BIPOC girls, girls and women alike, more so than men for sure, but it's not an exception.
Yeah. And then one of our listeners has said, gentleman, Ed, says the mainstream media is brutal. It makes me wonder if Trevor Noah were darker, would he have been chosen for the Daily Show? I'm like, yeah, you know, it's a hard question to answer, but it's unfortunate that that seems like a legitimate question, I guess, that we that shouldn't be, as you know, you know, how good is he at running a funny show? Like the rest of it is not that important.
Well, yeah. Trevor
So
Noah is amazing at what he does.
yeah, he really is.
And yes, the question is legit. Like, would he actually qualify if he wasn't of a mixed race and he wasn't as, lighter? Would he still be as funny as he seems today? Would he appeal to the majority of who he appeals to today? Would the world be listening to Trevor Noah today? It will be actually interesting to hear from Trevor Noah because 57% of this skin bleaching practice is happening in South Africa. He might have a personal experience or at least knows of someone or some things that are happening on the ground in South Africa. So
what I'm hearing is Trevor Noah needs to get involved with My Skin Global and to uplift this whole procedure. So somebody out there make that happen. And then Myrna also says that she learned from you about some nursery rhymes that were taught to reinforce some of these ideas. Do you recall any of that or that she's referring to?
Yes, makes me want to cry.
Do you need to pause for a moment? I don't want to.
No, it is really about, again, instilling self-esteem and instilling self-love. It is, I can always share, I can send you some of those. This probably wouldn't be as, it wouldn't be in the now, but I don't remember them word to word. But it's really about, telling you, affirming the existence of a girl. It's affirming the existence of a Black girl. It's affirming a girl's name, a girl's culture, a girl's beauty in alignment with those that we see on the world stage. So that you can begin to see yourself from a much bigger perspective and know that you can and you will and you're capable, and that your world is not limited by the skin that you're in. Yeah, it is about mankind. It's about self-love. Yeah.
Thank you. So you've mentioned many things that you're working to overcome in terms of the barriers to getting this message out there. What do you tend to do? You feel like people are responsive to this and are willing to take an action, or do you have to do a lot of education? Like, how do you move from I have this information to getting them?
Yeah. Well, we're very small right now, and people and groups that I have been able to have access to and speak to understand the critical message behind this and the reason why we're fighting it. They get it fully and completely. But again, being a small organization, a startup organization, if you may say, an organization that has no financial stability right now, we don't have the platforms like How Many Voices, now we do, but to speak from, to partner with, we're seeking those partnerships, we're seeking funding. We are hoping to work to really ensure some level of political will and, and really continuing the conversation, normalizing the conversation, kind of really doing a lot of education and advocacy work that makes people understand the implications of this practice from, social, mental, psychological effects of skin bleaching. And really, like, again, keeping the conversation going, keeping the pressure on, and really welcoming every one of us, like you said, has has a story to tell. This is about humanity. This is about all of us together. And it's the only way we're going to be stronger. It's the only way we're going to reach those that I don't have access to, is through those strong and sustainable relationships that gives me access to be where I don't have access to. That opens up the door to funding, that opens up the door to legislators, to the global political world, to have an opening for this conversation to be heard. So those are the challenges that we're having. And I think the other thing that is key is really, there's a very strong tie to skin bleaching from environmental perspective. But the data, there has not been enough data or interest to actually collect data that pertains to skin bleaching and, the mental health, overall health, or anything. There's really lack of data collection that ought to be done to support elimination of this practice. So that's again another area of interest, like who is actually doing what and who can we potentially partner with to bring this to light. Yeah.
Well, and I know that the Harmony Voices Foundation has some different school programs, and you are working on a school curriculum, I understand, for educating, or is that so maybe we can partner, but I know Alicia would love that, as would I. What is this curriculum that you're working on, and how does that, do you have places that you're already developing or delivering it, or how's that working?
Yeah, so like I said, this curriculum is focusing on educating young people and really ensuring that no young person continues to use skin bleaching. We are committed to, the curriculum is starting in middle school. Well, we need to get it funded first because it's a kind of a pause right now. But it's really looking at the past, present, and future impacts of colorism. It is looking at, empowering students on the pathway to skin positivity and self-esteem. It is talking about self-acceptance and self-love. But more importantly, it's talking about the skin that we are in. I have not once. I have a master's degree and I've gone through every level of educational system. I've studied in Africa, I've studied here in America. I have not seen a curriculum that talks about the evolutionary adaptation of our skin colors. It has not been done. This is one of the things that we're focusing on. We're looking at colorism. We're looking at the skin we're in, we're talking about that, self-esteem and self-awareness. And we're also looking at ways we can ensure that we're doing this in an out of school program because schools have been really difficult to partner with. And so we're thinking as soon as we're able to cover and to support this curriculum development, that it could potentially be implemented in out of school programs. And soon after that, as long as it's been tested, implemented, that phase, the middle stage informs high school. And once that is done in the second year, informs the elementary school. And so it is in a 3-phase curriculum: middle school, high school, and elementary school. And with that, after that, we can actually partner with states, with countries at a time. And they were adapted based on the local needs, but the vision ought to be the same. The practice, the intent, the vision behind it is really disrupting this mess. And so those are the educational strategies that we're using. Is really, working through this curriculum to make an impact by educating our kids about who they are, number one, before we can even look at anything else, so that they grow up. Like my daughter would have to understand who she is by the time she goes to college. There should be no confusion about who she is. She should not have, any girl should not have to look at the other to define who they are, or give any other person the permission to define you, because you're confused of the skin, by the skin that you're dressed in. So it's a big mission. It's a lot of work. And it's definitely work that I and my Skin Global team cannot do alone.
Right.
We need partners like you, and yes, everyone else around the globe. Yeah.
We all rise together. And I will say, over a decade ago, I was working in a social justice community, and there was a big movement to talk about what they call was centering, where you say, for example, if we make it so that young Black girls in schools feel that kind of confidence that you're talking about, that comfort in their skin, if we create environments and programs that do that, everyone else is likely to as well. Because if we take the folks that are being the most burdened and stigmatized, and we create an environment that supports and uplifts them, then it will also uplift concentric circles outwards. And so it's that, once again, that saying, like, the more that we do in this practice to address this discrimination and this cruelty that is being enacted, the more everybody's going to benefit, as well as these people who are being unfairly burdened at this time. So it's both the right thing to do and the best way to do it. And I'm so thank you for that, because so many other people are going to be benefited. And hopefully you'll be able to, obviously, Alicia says you're very inspiring. And I agree. Thank you. It's such a powerful thing that you're doing to help our young people, and the world will be better. Like, so much harm comes from wounded people. And how can you not be wounded when you're not, like you said, you're not comfortable in the skin that you're in? So thank you for all of us that you took this on. How do people get involved? Let's say somebody is watching right now and this is the first time they've heard about this. Obviously, they need to be donating to you. So let me pop the website up again, because that's going to make a difference. And if you go there, I think there's a way to sign up for your newsletter.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Well, yes. I'll remind people before I say where you can go find, more information and how to join us. It is mySkinGlobal.com. You can donate there. You can share your story. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I think my LinkedIn is linked on there. But I want to remind everyone listening that this is a very dangerous practice. I want to tell you that it is causing a lot of kidney damages. Liver failures are happening. Depression, anxiety, psychosis, blindness, skin discoloration and skin falling. It is now they've started marketing the before and after of babies after I guess you put products on babies. It is affecting the unborn babies. I cannot begin to describe how harmful this practice is, but yet we still continue to practice it. I will invite all of you to think and to work with me in defining what that is. Why do you, to me, I'm thinking, when you're dying of kidney failure or liver failure, are you still beautiful on that dying bed? If we can only think about that, when you just turned 30 and you look at yourself and everything that you have done to lighten your skin, has put you in a position where you feel like you need more surgeries and more creams and more injections, are you still beautiful? When all your melanin levels are worn off because of the harm you're inflicting on yourself, are you still beautiful? At what cost? What is it going to take for us to stop? It is projected to be $34 billion by 2023. Here in America, it's at least $86 billion that is spent on skin bleaching and injectables. What is it going to take?
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. It's a lot. Those are really good questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see if there's any. Lots of folks have been commenting, and Myrna also pointed out it's really important to tie how damaging bleaching is to the environment, especially given this increased global commitment to saving the planet on a global level. So folks, definitely go check out the website and sign up. Maybe pop a small donation in there. Get involved, volunteer, pass the word on, and I'm confident that we'll have you back. But if you have any questions before we close, otherwise, you could just ask a little bit more about like what's your next step. You know, you need to get funding for this curriculum. What's the next step in making that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our next step, yes, for sure. So we're seeking funding from various Denver-based, Colorado-based foundations. And so we are writing, I have a team of volunteers that are writing those grants that believe in the mission and vision of this organization. And so as soon as we secure the funding for the curriculum, and we're able to, to support our curriculum writer, then we will pilot and implement this curriculum. The piece to that I'm engaged in right now is identifying those partners. Those organizations that are doing out-of-school programming, that have a mental health lens to it, and they have to be BIPOC. They have to understand what this issue is from within. They have to understand it from within. And really being committed to breaking those chains and strongholds that are holding us, in a wrong place. And so we are identifying partners, seeking funding. And then the next phase is really to, pilot and implement the curriculum. We also hope to continue as funding comes through to be able to make those travels and, collect data and identify other, partners on a global basis that we can partner with. And lay some groundwork for when that curriculum is ready for piloting in different parts of the world as well and adapted. And I also hope to be working to build relationships with our elected officials and kind of moving the needle and beginning the conversation. But I also want to normalize the conversation. I want people to share their stories, regardless of what it is. You make a difference by sharing your story. We must all come together and hear ourselves and create a space that is conducive and, and welcoming of all different walks of life, because we are all dressed in a different skin tone, but we are all people.
Yeah,
we are all people.
No, and that's something that it bears repeating. I mean, it's a very simple truth that is, we all only know our experience until we engage outside of that. And so there's a lot of folks who would be, I think, it would help them, like you were saying, if they could hear those stories and understand what's actually happening here. This isn't a simple cosmetic thing. This has a real impact on people's lives and their health, as well as our environment. And it doesn't have to be this way. And we can work together to change it. But it is going to take the whole community. It can't just be the people who are deeply affected or primarily impacted immediately, because everybody's affected by it. But the BIPOC women and girls are affected by it immediately and most harmfully. And they can't be the only ones taking up the burden to address it. We have to work together, because that's not fair. I mean, it's too much. And so those stories can help people, I think, to get out of their own, like they can get a little bit that limited view and to hear and understand that larger experience. So thanks. Hopefully people go to the site and see what they have there. Are you a nonprofit? If people donate to you, do they get a tax benefit or?
That's a great question. So we are an LLC organization, but we have a fiscal agent in Center for Social Creativity.
Okay.
Which is a nonprofit organization. So that's typically the partnership we use to seek funding from local foundations and others who need that tax deductions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine a world in which this is a conversation we don't have to have again. And I hope we get there soon, because I think there's so many different kinds of beauty, and by trying to make it just one, bleached out thing, we're missing this whole spectrum that exists that we can celebrate. And I love that. I love that you are part of creating that. And I imagine that for all of us. And will you come back and join us for Earth Day?
I would love to. Thank you.
Oh, and so let's see. I don't see any more questions. Is there anything else that you want to leave as a final message for people, or a way that they could get involved?
I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to be here and be with you on this amazing day. What I want to say is that, yes, definitely check us out on mySkinGlobal.com, and just know that you're beautiful just the way you are. We are all beautiful just the way we are. We don't have to change a thing about who we are, but celebrate ourselves and our existence.
Yeah. Thank you.
And our differences too, because what brings us together is much bigger than our differences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it has so much to learn. I feel like every day I learn something new, and it's beautiful to have the opportunity we're all the same, we never learn new things. And then I will say, in a couple weeks, on exactly 15 days from now, we're going to be doing, Alicia and I, and whoever wants to stop in, a little live stream for Giving Tuesday to do some fundraising for Harmony Voices. And we hope that you will join us for that and stay tuned on our newsletter. And what a gift to have you here today, Francoise. We're so grateful to you for sharing your mission and your heart. It's very moving. And thank you, everybody, for joining us, our listeners. And this will be on Apple Podcasts, and it'll stay on YouTube. So if you want to share it with folks, that's going to be very easy. And we'll see you all in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for having me, and for all of you for listening, and for Harmony Voices for creating this space for people.
Thank you to Alicia for supporting us and the Harmony Voices Foundation. All right, everybody. Bye. See you later.
Have our story. We will sing our song. Let us empower.